Hello, everyone, and welcome to our event tonight with Lee Pace and Mark Simpson-Voss about Lee's new book, Good Walks, Rediscovering the Soul of Golf at 18 of the Carolinas' Best Courses. My name is Talia. I'm the events manager at Flyleaf. If you're new to the store, I encourage you to browse our full events calendar by clicking the Flyleaf Books logo above us. I've been busy adding listings to the calendar for the spring and summer seasons, and there are many more to come. So please be sure to follow us on Crowdcast or subscribe to our email newsletter from our website so you don't miss anything. If you'd like to support Flyleaf and our guests, please keep in mind that Lee's books, Good Walks, and Football in a Forest are available from Flyleaf. We're open for browsing, so you can come in to shop or click the link below our faces to buy your copies. All of the copies will be signed by the author, and if you'd like a special personalization or inscription from Lee, please indicate that in your order comments. We're so grateful that Lee has made himself available to come and sign copies for us. All right, I will go ahead and introduce our guest tonight. Lee Pace is a writer, editor, and publisher with more than 30 years of experience writing about golf. He lives in Chapel Hill. And tonight, Lee is in conversation with Mark Simpson-Voss, who is the Wyndham Robertson editorial director at UNC Press, where he publishes a wide range of nonfiction, including books about North Carolina and the South. He has worked with a stellar community of local writers, including David Menconi, Scott Hewler, Catherine Bashir, Melinda Maynor-Lowry, Wesley Hogan, Jean Nickel, Sandy Darity, and Kirsten Mullen, and many more. Alongside his publishing career, he spent 10 years as a freelance sports writer covering college basketball and football. Thank you both so much for joining us tonight.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Talia. Thanks for getting us started. Lee, it's great to be with you. I've been looking forward to this for weeks.
Yeah, this is a great event, and we've talked about this book for a long, long time. I actually looked back in my email folder, and it looks like the summer of 2016, we started a conversation, and it took about a year for us to actually pull it together, and now it's almost 4 years after that. So you can't be in the publishing business and be impatient. I have learned that.
That is absolutely right. One of many things that you and I share in common is an understanding of the timelines it takes to make a good book. But yeah, just delighted with how this has turned out. And you're right, your records match mine. And of course, we've known each other casually from around Carolina sports, but it was great fun to be able to work with you closely in the development of this book. I just want to take a second as we get started to thank Flyleaf again at UNC Press. We just love our local booksellers. We're grateful for Flyleaf. It's really fun for me to be able to launch this book with Lee at Flyleaf. Even though we can't be there physically, it's just nice to be able to know that this event is being hosted there. So special thanks to all the good folks there. We were talking before we got started, Lee, about how we'd like to be together in person, but there's something about these online platforms. You're actually coming to us tonight from Charlotte, as I recall, down there for a little golf purpose.
Well, the Wells Fargo Championship here at nearby Quail Hollow. I'm actually in a hotel room. We had scheduled this a little bit of a conflict. I've got some business at the golf course tomorrow, so came down, was able to, the magic of the internet and virtual communications, we're able to do this from a couple different cities and folks from all over the region listening to us tonight.
Well, I think we're going to have some fun. And I just, I want to start off, if looking at a beautiful book like this does not make you want to get out, grab your clubs, and play around at one of the great courses in North Carolina or South Carolina, I don't know what will, but there's even better content inside the book, and it's going to be fun to talk a little bit about that tonight. Lee, just to kind of get us started, as I mentioned, we know each other a little bit through Carolina athletics, and I think, some of the folks who are tuning in tonight might know you best as the sideline reporter for Tar Heel football on the Tar Heel Sports Network or from your newsletter Extra Points, but you're a prolific golf writer. And, one of the things I really started to get to know you when you were working on a book about Pinehurst a couple of years ago called The Golden Age of Pinehurst. But I just wonder, how many golf books have you actually written?
Well, it's about 15 right now of various size and scope, Mark. Most of them are coffee table format books, club histories, everything from Pinehurst to the Country Club of Charleston to Forsyth Country Club. I did a book for the Carolinas Golf Association for its centennial about a dozen years or so ago. So mostly specialize in clubs that have an anniversary or a story that they want to tell. And the anniversary can be 100 years, like I'm doing at Biltmore Forest right now, or it could be 20 years, like I'm doing nearby at Old Chatham. So there's a full range there, and the idea is to do a book that, more than anything, looks good and feels good and reads good. You want something that's handsome sitting on your desk or your coffee table.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I envy the life you live in a lot of respects. You get to play a lot more than I do. But I think you told me you play about 40 rounds a year. Is that about right?
That's probably about right. It's kind of hot and cold. With the work I do with Carolina football, I pretty much have to put the sticks in the closet, not all fall, but at least a good bit in the fall. I lose my weekends to play golf. So this time of year, I'm trying to get out a couple times a week, and was in Pinehurst last week. We'll be in Asheville a couple times over the coming months. And so to try to get around, and obviously doing this book, it forced me to get out and play quite a bit, which, is hard work, but somebody had to do it.
I love it. I love it. So this book is titled Good Walks. And of course, anybody who has been around golf for any length of time knows that famous Mark Twain quote that golf is a good walk spoiled. And suffice to say, I know you disagree. I wonder if you want to just start kind of talking about the purpose of the book and why you wrote it, and maybe read a few paragraphs for us from the introduction, which kind of goes right at what this book is about and who it's for.
Well, and as you know, we actually pulled that Mark Twain quote out, put it in the front of the book and then underneath it put the word poppycock, which just kind of sums up my thoughts on that. But yeah, I'd be happy to read a few paragraphs from the introduction, and it begins that perhaps it was apt that the very month I signed a deal with University of North Carolina Press to write this book about the joy of playing golf on foot and foot alone, that I was presented by the golf gods, neatly wrapped with ribbon and bow and a sweatband, a case study illustrating my old school approach to the game. I teed off at 8 a.m. on July 22nd, 2017 at UNC Finley Golf Course in Chapel Hill, walking with my bag slung over my shoulder and joined by 3 cart riders. Did I feel antisocial by leaving a single in a cart? Certainly not. Why should I accede to his preference for riding over my own desire to walk? But I did tell him I'd help out with the cart if he got stuck. I play golf for a myriad of reasons. One is the never-ending challenge and the occasional pat on the head from the golf gods with that sub-80 score. Another is exercise. A third is the meditative quality of walking the ground and embracing nature. Enjoying the companionship of my playing partners is important as well. All the better if that's split 3 ways while walking along rather than spending 4 hours plus with one guy in a cart. Betting, lame jokes, hearing a guy tell some careworn story when it's his turn to hit, pounding beverages, those things don't even register. One of golf's earliest appeals was its health-giving benefits, the player walking some 5 to 6 miles over varied terrain, making strength and endurance key elements of the sport. Too often today, that component has been lost, with many golfers playing in a default mode of riding in motorized carts. I remember setting a last-minute round in Pinehurst many years ago, getting to tee time with 2 others to play. One of them showed up and said he'd invited a 4th, which was fine. Might as well fill up the carts, he said. Apparently, it didn't even register with him that somebody would prefer to walk rather than just jump in a cart. I knew on that day, with the temperature at 76 degrees when we teed off and forecast for highs in the upper 90s, that breaking out at 80 would be a challenge. Beating the golf course and beating my own mental demons, those that all golfers fight in terms of focus, confidence, and emotion, and my physical limitations were all that mattered. Yet I played 2 weeks earlier at the same morning tee time on a day not quite as hot and shot an 80. My game was coming into mid-summer form as it always does, and if I could just make a full turn in good posture and not get quick at the top, I felt I could shave a couple strokes and land in lucky 70s nirvana. I'd been hardened that day 2 weeks earlier by having clipped 2 shots off the front 9 total on the back 9, indicating fatigue was not an issue. All I can say is stay hydrated, the starter counseled on the first tee. I stood at 5 over on the 13th tee, having drunk several bottles of water and a Powerade at the turn, and sought shade when convenient. Some of that light I found to the left of the 17th fairway when we were looking for a wayward tee shot. I enjoy taking photos of my collection of lightweight, simple carry bags against interesting architectural features for social media posts. So I took a quick snap of my bag in the cool shadows. Out in the sun, it was 92 with a heat index of 105, and later posted it on Twitter. "Surely you're not walking," responded one follower. "I'm amazed and aghast at the same time," wrote another. To me, it was just another day at the golf course. It was with no small amount of satisfaction that I played the last 5 holes plus one, penciled in a 78, and enjoyed my favorite hamburger afterward in recovery mode. To hell with Mark Twain, who supposedly once said that golf is a good walk spoiled. To me, in a passionate, resolute minority, carts are great golf ruin.
That pretty much says it right there. So, Lee, I think we need to get something out of the way for the folks that are in the audience tonight. Do you hate cart riding?
Well, yes and no. I do not for the people that need a golf cart, for the people who are elderly, who have had a knee operation, a hip operation, or just physically can't get around, and a cart is the only way that they can physically still enjoy the game. For those, I am all about having carts and making them available. It's the fact that so many people, particularly Americans, just think that the way to play golf is in a cart, and they're robbing themselves of the exercise, of the fellowship, of the meditative qualities that I mentioned. I'm working on this book at Biltmore Forest, and there's a great story there that supposedly the very first golf cart in the United States was created at Biltmore Forest by an elderly gentleman in the 1930s who was simply too old to walk the very hilly fairways at that particular course in Asheville. And so he created an apparatus with a wooden platform. He nailed a wooden chair to it, affixed a couple of wheels to it, and a handle at the front, and hired a couple of caddies to pull him around the golf course. And apparently the caddies, after a while, created a fuss and said this was too demeaning. They were fine to carry a bag, but they were not going to pull some old guy around on this apparatus. So his next step was to affix a gas-powered motor to it. And that actually worked, but it was very noisy, and a lot of the other golfers and the neighbors complained, so the club outlawed that. So that was the beginning of the impetus for the motorized cart, which in the 1950s and 60s became an entirely different industry, and it became a way for the golf industry to make profits on the rental of individual golf carts. So that's when the use of golf carts blossomed, and it's also when Americans just got lazy and said, well, why go to the trouble of walking and sweating and toiling and exerting, and when we can just sit on our rear end and ride for 4 hours? So to answer your question, they're great if you have to have them. If not, come on, let's sling the bag over your shoulder, push a trolley, or get a caddy.
Well, I think you've said it well. So when we started the idea of this book, this was not necessarily the kind of core idea. It's something that you kind of came around to over time. And I remember we talked initially about just finding a way to write about the history of the game in the Carolinas, the way that, the Carolinas are the cradle of golf in America, as we talk about, and, trying to think about how to tell those stories and how to introduce people to some of the great places. But you really found this theme of good walks and the benefits of the walking game as you went through the process of thinking about and researching and writing the book. So just talk a little bit more about how the book kind of came to be and how that theme took hold with you.
Yeah, Mark, the original idea was a golf architecture book. It's just, I've been very lucky over 30 years. I've covered almost every corner of the Carolinas in particular to some degree, and knew so much of the history and so many of the neat nooks and crannies and the great old courses. And just originally thought of doing a book about architecture, go to, Seth Rayner down in Charleston at the Country Club of Charleston and Yeamans Hall. And you got all these Donald Ross golf courses that were built in the teens and the 20s and the 30s. You've got the modern courses that Tom Fazio and so many others have done, that there's just such a rich, Ellis Maples, there's such a richness of clubs with great ambiance, great visuals. I just thought it lent itself to a coffee table book. And then further just nurturing the idea, thought, well, let's write it from the standpoint of the walking golfer. who has a feel for the course and the ambiance and the people there much better than somebody who just jumps in a cart and runs around at 40 miles an hour on the edge of the fairways. So that's where it came, and credit to you for recognizing that there was some potential here and helping nurture this through the approval process at the press and get us the green light in the summer of 2017 to go ahead with this.
That's right. That's right. Well, listen, some of the benefit is you wrote this book with, I mean, people like me in mind in a lot of respects. You know, I when I played, I generally played in a cart because that's what the people around me did. But I really love to walk the course and have learned even more in listening to you and learning from others like you about those benefits. So, I mean, one of the things you talk about in the book is what some of those real benefits of walking is. And I wonder if you want to just highlight a couple of those as you talk about throughout the book.
Well, number one, plain and simple, is exercise. I mean, if you're going to walk the golf course, it's about 6 miles. You know, and in the book, we posted a few screenshots from my fitness app on my phone. And, you know, 4 hours walking 6 miles, you're going to burn over 700 calories. So that's a pretty good day's work. So that's number one. Yeah, there's a screenshot of one particular day. So that's number one. Number two is just the fellowship. You can talk with everybody in your group. I played last weekend played with 3 other individuals, and by the front, and these weren't regular people that I played with all the time. And so by 9 holes, I knew something about where they were from, their families, their golf game, their work, because I could talk to all of them. You know, it's not like just riding with one person in a golf cart. There's the, you feel the course with your feet. You can take in the beauty. If you hit a bad shot, you can kind of, you know, snarl at yourself and you can mutter under your breath for a little while. You can, you know, you can talk if you want. If you don't, you can just be by yourself. You pick up the course architecture so much better. You see things that you wouldn't see otherwise speeding by in a cart. And quite frankly, some golf carts, particularly after rain, are restricted to the cart paths. And there is nothing worse than cart path restricted golf, and you're walking 90 degrees across the fairway all day, grabbing 2 or 3 clubs, having to walk to the other side of the fairway, walk back, and you lose your train of thought and you just lose the pleasure of the day. At least I certainly do. So those are among the reasons, certainly, Mark, but it's just, stop and smell the roses is the main thing, and walking, you can do that better than anything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I will say, you know, somebody who loves history and certainly loves the history of the game, to be able to get back in touch with that tradition as well, you know, to be able to think about the way that the game began, and to get back to those roots is another thing that I've really come to appreciate about it.
And it's great that we're starting to see things come full circle. As I mentioned, you know, in the 50s and 60s when the golf cart business took off, and there was a lot of money to be made with golf carts, and a lot of resorts and clubs started requiring people to ride because they wanted the cart revenue. And slowly that has come full circle. And I'm happy to report that in writing this book, you know, 3 of the courses I featured are the linchpin courses at 3 major resort properties in the Carolinas: Sea Pines Plantation on Hilton Head, Kiowa Island Resort on Kiowa Island, and then Pinehurst Resort. And 10, 20 years ago, all of those had various restrictions on walking. And now all of them allow unrestricted walking by anybody at any time on any course. I think the ocean course at Kiowa might allow carts in the afternoon in the summer because it gets so hot there. That might be the only restriction. But for the most part, you can now walk on any of those courses at any time. And even Pinehurst in the late last year has started allowing push carts, or trolleys as they're called in the United Kingdom, on all of their courses at all time. And I've got a sidebar in the book on the use of trolleys, and that's push carts have been something that have been part and parcel of the golf scene in the United Kingdom since the beginning of time. But a lot of clubs in the States have kind of looked down their nose at the trolley and think it's kind of a Muni look or a Public Links look. But now they're pretty much allowed and available at almost all clubs.
Yeah. Well, so you touched on some of the choices that you made. So there are more than 18 great places to play golf in North Carolina and South Carolina. There are more than 18 places that are great to have a good walking experience. But you picked 18. And, I just want to show folks that we've got a map in the front of the book with the table of contents that gives you a sense of how they're spread out. And they really do take us from mountains to coast, from upstate in South Carolina down to the seashore near Hilton Head. But Lee, I wonder if you could just talk about how you chose the courses and what they represent in terms of the selection. Yeah,
and looking at that map, Mark, I'm always thinking about what would I have done differently or what would I do the next time. The Outer Banks is, we missed on that, but there's just, the Outer Banks just does not have the amount of quality walkable golf courses. And I frankly hadn't spent a lot of time up there, so I didn't know what was there. So that was perhaps an oversight. But otherwise, I tried to spread the courses out among the Carolinas, get some on the coast and the mountains and the sand hills in some of the urban areas. I tried to spread them out by eras. Roughly half the book we've positioned as the front 9 are the more, we call them the golden age courses that were built in the early 1900s up through World War II. And then after that, beginning with the Dunes Club in Myrtle Beach in the late 1940s, it's more the modern era courses. I want to have representation of all the great architects that are represented in the Carolinas. Donald Ross has got 6 courses that are featured, and maybe a little top heavy in Ross, but he did so much great work, and all of his courses are walkable because they're all compact. They were built at a time when courses were not spread out for real estate purposes to put more building lots along the perimeters of holes that tend to spread golf courses out in the last 20 or 30 years. Seth Rayner is represented in Yeamans Hall down in Charleston, Perry Maxwell at Old Town in Winston-Salem, Ellis Maples at the Country Club of North Carolina and at Grandfather. More recently, Pete Dye at the Ocean Course in the Harbor Town in Hilton Head, Tom Fazio with Eagle Point, which is a course in Wilmington that has a great caddy staff, and you're not allowed to take a cart there until the afternoon because they want their caddies to be used. So try to spread it out, older, newer, geographical architects, and also I thought it's important to work in some municipal courses as well. And there's one chapter on the municipal courses, and it's built. I start with the Wilmington Municipal, include Hillendale and Durham, Charleston Municipal, and Asheville Municipal are the ones touched on in that. So it's important to we go all the way from the more exclusive clubs like Eagle Point and Old Chatham to courses that you can play to walk in off the street and pay $35 and sling your club across your shoulder and go have a great experience.
I won't lie to you. I'm especially happy that Hillendale made the cut as somebody who plays at Hillendale quite a bit, as often as I get a chance to. So, one other thing I wanted to ask you about, so the COVID pandemic entered into this story in a kind of a surprising way. You were really in the home stretch of writing and working on gathering illustrations when things began to shut down. But were there things that, as you kind of brought the book to a close in the midst of the pandemic, things that kind of surprised you, and maybe trends that you saw emerging? You referenced a little bit that there seems to be some new interest in giving people opportunities to walk. And I wonder if you've seen that increase with this kind of shift with the pandemic.
Well, Mark, after being shut down for a month or 2 months at the beginning of the pandemic, golf was something that blossomed very early among things that could, because people could be outside, they could stay 6 feet apart, and it was deemed to be healthy and safe. And people had some time on their hands because they weren't walking. They weren't working. So a lot of people were stuck at home, and it came to be known as what's called the COVID handicap. Most people's handicap went down a few shots over the next year because they were playing a lot of golf. And I was actually in Pinehurst last week for a couple of days, and it's interesting, the dynamics of what's going on there at the main resort, Pinehurst Resort and Country Club, that has the 9 golf courses. Their meeting business, their group business has suffered, but their individual group, the traveler of 4 guys, 8 guys, 10 guys coming from New York or Cleveland or Ohio or Minnesota or someplace to come down, that is thriving. Pinehurst is drivable from all over the East Coast, so people are driving in because they hadn't had to get on airplanes. So the golf business really, Mark, has survived the pandemic, and a lot of people, and early when clubs were easing back into play, a lot of them were restricted 1 golfer per cart. Mm-hmm. So some clubs ran out of carts early, so people were forced to walk. And a lot of people started walking and say, this works, I like it. And the manufacturers of small, lightweight carry bags and trolleys or push carts, their demand just shot through the roof over the summer. They could not keep manufacturing these items quickly enough, and they're still hard to find right now. So COVID has actually been good for the golf business, and it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next year or two with the golf travel business, and whether the group business comes back to some of these resorts that have lost the group business. And for people like myself and you and others who have not been able to travel to the United Kingdom that we normally do every 2 or 3 years, we haven't been able to do it. Well, we're going to want to make that trip. So maybe we'll make that trip when things ease up even more, and that'll open things back up for the group travelers.
Yeah, here's hoping. It's funny what you say about the bags, because I was just thinking, Jones bags and Airstream trailers, good luck right now. The demand is just off the charts. But as you say, it seems like it's been a surprisingly good time for a lot of the area clubs. So, Lee, when I think about who this book is for, who you wrote it for, the thing that I think about is all the great people we meet along the way. And, really a lot of these chapters are structured not just around the courses, but also around the people that you had a chance to meet there. I wonder if you could just talk about some of these characters who stand out for you and what they represent and tell us about the game.
Yeah, Mark, as I said, it began as an architecture book. So with each chapter, I want to tell about the club, the architecture, the history there. But I wanted to find at least one person who kind of sang from the same hymnal in terms of loving to walk the golf course and doing everything to avoid getting in, one of those motorized contraptions. And with the help of people that I might have already known at a particular club or course, with the help of the golf pro or the general manager, I was able to find somebody like that and play the golf course with them, get their feel on why they like to walk instead of ride, their thoughts on the golf course, the idiosyncrasies, the parts of the course that they particularly like. And the thread that ran through it was there were so many people like me that just are very passionate about experiencing the course on foot. And I would say I went into this in 2017 when I started somewhat resolute about always walking, but with the people I met and the stories that I found of people who are just so passionate about playing golf this way, I became pretty militant about avoiding the cart at all costs. And that's the way I am now. There are certain times when you need to get in a golf cart, whether for political reasons or manners or the format of a group event, that it just wouldn't work to walk. And I understand that, and that's fine. But now I will go to great lengths to make sure that I can walk. And I found so many older folks. I'm 63 right now, so I still got a lot left, but I'm starting to round the fourth turn, so to speak. But I met so many passionate golfers my age and above that are resolute about slinging that bag on their shoulder and walking. I was in Asheville just a couple of weeks ago, and one of them was a retired urologist named Bud Brazel, who is 85 years old, I think now, and he is out there almost every day And the golf pro there kind of jokes that, if Bud Brazel is not there, then the course isn't opening, because he will play in wind, rain, heat, blizzard, whatever. If it starts to storm, he doesn't need a lift in from anybody. He's going to finish the 9 that he starts. And he said to me, and I truly believe him, that it's a great game to get old with. And you get to the point that you don't always worry about your score. You just enjoy getting out on the golf course. And there's an attorney in Myrtle Beach named Tommy Britton who plays at the Dunes Club. And I played with him a couple years ago, and he was in his mid to upper 60s, I believe. And it just killed him telling about the second 18 holes. He had catapulted, or he capitulated. And now for the second 18, he might get in a cart. But that first 18, he was still going to walk and carry his bag, come hell or high water. And there's so many folks like that at every club, and I found one of them at almost everybody and almost every club. And much of the story is built around these guys and ladies also that just love the walk, and they love the experience, and they love what it does for them physically and emotionally and mentally.
Yeah. You reminded me. So we've got Mother's Day coming up, and your mention both guys and ladies reminds me of one of my favorite stories in the book. I just love the story that you tell in chapter 4, which is the chapter focusing on Charlotte Country Club, about Kitty and Teddy Garner. And I wonder if you could just tell folks a little bit about the Garners and Kitty's story.
Well, it's a very interesting coincidence with a prior book project I had, Mark. I mentioned earlier I did a book for the Carolinas Golf Association in the 2006, 7, 8 area. And one element of that is we hired a photographer to go out and just shoot 8 or 10 courses kind of at random across the 2 Carolinas, just getting candid shots of people playing golf and having fun, and the ambiance and the beauty of the courses they were playing. And the photographer happened to get a shot at Charlotte Country Club of a woman and her, I think at the time he was maybe 9 or 10 years old. It was a wonderful shot of them both walking down the second fairway of this woman on the right and her young teenage son on the left. And it was a great picture, and we used it in the book. And so come a dozen years later, I'm looking for this good angle at both Roaring Gap and at Charlotte Country Club. And the head pro at Roaring Gap said, well, you ought to talk to a woman named Kitty Garner, who's a member here in the summer, and she's here a lot in the summer. And she's also a member at Charlotte. So she gave me her phone number and email, and I contacted her, and she told her what I want to do. And she said, that'd be great. I'll play with you at Roaring Gap or at Charlotte. And we wound up playing at both places. And we got to talking when I met her at Charlotte, and she said that she and her son had been photographed in this book that had come out a dozen years earlier. And I said, I wonder if that's my Carolinas Golf Association book. And I put 2 and 2 together and realized it was. So I had the immediate idea to let's restage that same photograph that we took in 2007 and do it here in 2019. And her son, Teddy, has grown up and is now at the University of Virginia. And yeah, that's the...
I'm just going to treat folks. So this is from page 54 of the book. Here are the photos that Lee's talking about.
And we've got the picture from 2007 juxtaposed to the one from 2019. Hired Bob Donnan, who's a great photographer and a guy I've worked with on a lot of projects to shoot that. And I showed the original picture to Kitty, and I'll read you a quote from her that's in the chapter. And she said, "That's a very happy picture. Golf has been a great family game for us. When Teddy and I played, we almost always walked. It was a great way for us to connect. I think golf is such a wonderful game for a young man to play. You learn etiquette, manners, discipline, integrity. The foot wedge is always available if you want to try and use it, but you learn that that's not what you do." So it was wonderful to play with Kitty and Teddy at Charlotte a couple of summers ago and build a chapter around them and the wonderful heritage at that club. And so that's how that chapter came about. And I hope Kitty and her family are enjoying this book. Sadly to say, she's had some health problems of recent that I know that she's battling hard on right now. And I know all the members at Charlotte and the staff there are waiting for her to get back out and start lugging that golf bag around the golf course at Charlotte.
Just before that quote you read, there's a great line about Kitty routinely running down to the course and playing 18 in 2 hours, basically running between holes because she wanted to get that game in before she had to get back to the family. It was just a great story, and reminded me that this book is a great gift for moms. Lots of good stories out there for moms who love golf. So another thing that you mentioned, of course, is Bob Donnan and the photography. Great images in this book. And, everyone here, I'm just going to show one more photo from the interior. And as I do, Lee, maybe you could just talk a little bit about how the photos came to be, because that is such a beautiful feature of this book. Well, just this great photo of the ocean course, which, again, boy, if that doesn't make you want to go play, I don't know what will.
A key element of all these coffee table books I've done, Mark, and even though I'm a writer and I'm predilected to the written word, I understand in these books that the images are every bit as important, if not more important, than the written word. So the pictures have come from a variety of sources. We used a nationally recognized photographer named Larry Lambrecht, had shot a handful of courses, and we were able to pick up some of his. Hired Bob Donnan to shoot a couple of courses. There's an outstanding young photographer in Chapel Hill named Ryan Montgomery, who has shot some shots from Old Chatham and Biltmore Forest. I even took a few of them myself. I mean, who would have thought 10 years ago that you could use your phone and get quality photography? But you sure can, particularly once you develop a knack for knowing how to set it up, get the lighting right, the shadows right, and tweak them with the editing apps that are on the phone. So I took a handful of them, and the use of the drone in the last 5 years has just come a million miles. And my first experience with the drone was in the book I did on Kenan Stadium in 2015 and 16, and this is the first time I had hired a photographer with a drone to shoot a full Kenan Stadium during a Carolina game late in the afternoon in November with all the color around the stadium. And we just got some incredibly gorgeous photos. And so I knew in this book that I had to have a combination of aerial and ground level pictures. So we've got a nice blend of those. I think drones are so sophisticated and they give such a unique view up above the golf course, but you still got to have the ground level shots that give the angle that the golfer are going to hit. So we've got a nice combination. We've also got vintage postcards and some old course maps, and a lot of memorabilia to spice it up.
Yeah, it really, I can't recommend enough. I mean, it's just such a visually rich story, and I think that's one of the things that people are really going to enjoy about this book. So, Lee, we've got just a couple of minutes for one last story, and the story that I love that ends this book is a story that actually involves another Chapel Hill legend, Mayor Howard Lee. And if I'm not mistaken, Mayor Lee is actually with us this evening, if I saw the list of participants correctly. So I was delighted to see that. But Lee, I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about the story of Old Chatham and Howard Lee's role in that story.
Well, I've gotten to know Mr. Lee very well, and he's a grand gentleman. We've had a lot of fun playing golf over the last year or so. He is a regular at Old Chatham, and you will see him several times a week slinging that bag over his shoulder and walking 9 or 18 holes. But he's a great story about how he came to golf. Of course, he was mayor of Chapel Hill 3 terms in the 60s and 70s, was the first black mayor of a major southern city, and that drew national attention. He later worked in administration at Duke University, and then was in the North Carolina General Assembly. And he tells a great story in the early 90s of noticing at the General Assembly that in the afternoon, particularly a nice spring, summer, fall afternoon, that the halls would empty out, and he would wonder, where are all these guys going? And he figured out they were going to play golf. And he came to learn that if you want to get anything done, and if you really wanted to build meaningful relationships, you needed to learn to play golf. So he went to Ed Ibargwin, who was the golf pro at Duke at the time, And Ed gave him some golf lessons, and Howard jokes that Ed had to take the tennis swing out of him because he'd played a lot of tennis over the years. And so he started to play golf and fell in love with it, and found it very apropos that after having worked with the Jim Hunt administration in the 1970s and started what became the Mountains to the Sea walking trail that now runs from the mountains all the way to the Outer Banks, that was the brainchild of Howard Lee, and he has walked the entire thing. He is very much into health, fitness, and walking, so golf became very natural to him. And time went on, and he became friends with R.B. Fitch, and they became golf partners and played a lot of golf together, and started thinking in the late 90s about maybe doing their own golf project. And they scoped out some land in Chatham County near the Farrington Village property that the Fitch family had developed. And word got around that they were looking at the possibility of doing a golf course. And it came to the attention of Paul Rizzo, who at the time was in a consortium of gentlemen who had launched what would become Old Chatham Golf Club. They wanted all the clubs in the 90s in Durham, Chapel Hill, and Raleigh were full. They wanted a club that would be golf only, no tennis, no swimming court, no swimming pool, no country club. They just wanted golf only. And so Paul called Howard and said, you mind if we look at the land that you have and what you're thinking about doing? And Howard said, fine, come take a look. And so they looked at it, and the Rizzo group said, I don't think this will work, but why don't y'all join with us and help us try and make our club become a reality? And so that's how Howard Lee became one of the founding directors of Old Chatham Club, which was founded in, the idea was hatched in 1998. The club was founded in 1999 and opened in 2001. And Howard Lee is on the board there in the clubhouse of the literal who's who of political, sports, and business leaders in the Triangle at the time. Everybody from Smedes York to James Maynard. Dean Smith was a founding director. Jim Hyler was, Gregory Poole, Roger Perry, so many just key business people in the area. And the club was conceived to be a walking golf course for the most part, totally inclusive. Anybody of any race, creed, color, sex, denomination would be welcome. It would be an open club built around an old traditional Eastern philosophy of a golf-intensive, golf-only environment. So Howard has been there for 20 years, and he is still walking strong and enjoying the experience with they're up to 260 members now.
Well, I think that's a great note on which to end and open things up to questions we might have from the folks who are in the audience. Lee, thanks for sharing these great stories with us.
They're great stories. We could go on. We could almost read through the whole book. And one thing about Howard I meant to mention was that, he was marveling over the technology in the carts that they have at Old Chatham, and they have USB ports where you can plug in your iPhone and power it back up. And we were playing one day, and he said, isn't the whole purpose of playing golf is to get away from your technology for at least a few hours? Why would you want to be able to recharge your phone out on the golf course? But so the great thing is there's different strokes for different folks. If you want to take a cart, you can. If you want to sling it over your shoulder or take a trolley, you can do that as well. And that's the case at most courses today.
All right, we are going to go ahead and open it up for questions. If there are any questions from the audience, feel free to write them in the chat or click the Ask a Question feature at the bottom of your screen. I have a quick question sort of about the process of writing this book. Since we have Mark here, I would love to hear about what you mentioned, getting the book acquired by UNC Press, but what did the editing process look like? What were some of the suggested revisions or guidelines that you gave Lee about the book?
Well, it's, so every editor needs to know, first of all, that they have a lot to offer a process, but they're not the experts on the subject. And I think this is a great example. So, Lee plays a lot more than I do. He's been around the game a lot more than I have, but I have just enough interest to be able to represent the audience that we're trying to reach. So, in this case, it's great to take an experienced writer like Lee and to be able to turn him loose with a good concept that we had worked on together. There was a solid outline that we felt good about. We workshopped the list of courses together to think about the different kinds of stories we wanted to prioritize. But, I think that the process of editing then is when a manuscript is turned in, always is going to benefit from an extra set of eyes. I hope Lee would agree that I'm a fairly reasonable editor. I don't think I had my red pen out too much, but certainly there were stories and things that I wanted to draw out a little bit more. And I think, again, just trying to figure out the balance between history and present, to be able to bring some of these first-person voices to the fore. That was really something I knew Lee wanted to do, and I think that's part of what makes the book so special. So that was certainly part of what we worked on at the end. I will say the front 9 and back 9 was my idea. One of the things we were trying to think about is how to organize these 18, and do you do it geographically? But that front 9 and back 9 was my idea, but it was a good one that we hatched together. And we had an idea to end the book with a 19th hole. Everybody knows that when you wrap up a good game of 18 holes, you want to kick back with a cold beverage. So we've got a nice homecoming in the 19th hole at the end. So I guess those are a couple of the things that I brought to it.
Yeah, and UNC Press did a really great job with Mark's direction and vision, and his shepherding the project through. And the book looks great. The designers, the editors, everybody just did an outstanding job. And I think it's something that anybody would be proud to put on their coffee table. Even if you don't want to read anything I've written, if you just want to look at the pictures, it's worth it in and of itself there.
All right, we have a question here from Sean, who asks, over the years, how many people would you estimate that you've converted to devoted walkers?
I'm sorry?
How many people would you estimate you've converted to walkers of golf courses?
Oh, gosh, I would have no idea. I'm doing my part. And one thing I've enjoyed doing, in social media is on Twitter. Is just whenever I go play, I'll usually take a photo. I'll try and juxtapose, my golf bag against, some element of the golf course and put it on Twitter. And so I hope I'm, maybe planting a seed with some people, and hopefully this book will plant a seed with some people that, that this is the way to go, and it's a more enjoyable way to play.
Mm-hmm. All right. We have another question here from John, who says there's still a number of good loops around the triangle that don't really encourage walking. Any tips on getting them to think in a different direction? Oh,
just raise hell. Just let them know you're out there. Let them know that if they don't ease up the restrictions, you'll go elsewhere. Because I know, there are plenty of public access facilities in the triangle area that are open to golfers anytime. I know UNC Findlay is. I believe Duke University is. I know Hillendale is. You can walk at any time there. So if there's some that are restrictive, just let them know that there are alternatives out there, and just, I'll help you supply information on elements and trends in the game that other people are realizing that allowing walking is just the way to go.
I'll just echo that as somebody who came to the game fairly late, and plays less frequently. One of the things I love is just how accessible the course pros are in this area, how much they love to talk with folks who are coming out to the course on a given day. And so just having a conversation with somebody who's, whether the club pro or a clubhouse manager, it's amazing. They want to listen. They want people to have a great experience. And I think if they hear that this is something that you really value and you want to be able to enjoy, they're going to respond to that.
And I would tell them, I would cite what's going on at Pinehurst right now. That the quote home of American golf, they have deemed it the proper decision to let anybody walk and get around the golf course, any of their 9 courses at any time that they want to. And if they're doing it at Pinehurst, everybody else ought to do that. Now, there are 2 courses 2 and 4. They do not allow golf carts to go on the fairway. So they are somewhat restrictive in that regard. But you can still walk and carry your bag or take a trolley or take a caddy and walk anywhere you want to.
Absolutely. I see in the chat, Lee, that you asked, what is your favorite course? If anyone watching wants to comment what their favorite course is, it'd be interesting to see your answers. And then, Lee, would you like to answer that question? What's your top pick?
Yeah, that was actually a plant on my part, Talia. There are so many, and I actually had a golf bag made recently. There's a company in Oregon called the Flag Bag Company that will take pin flags that have been flown over golf courses, and I acquired flags from 8 of my favorite courses, and they were able only to work 6 of them in, and I kind of picked the ones that I used just because of the color of the flags or the design of the logos or how they all fit. And I posted on Twitter just a week or so ago that 6 of my favorite courses they're featured in the book were Pinehurst number 2 because it's the oldest, Grandfather because it's probably the most beautiful, the most majestic, Palmetto in Aiken, South Carolina because it's the oldest, Old Town in Winston-Salem is probably my gun to my head last round of golf, probably my favorite course I would play. Eagle Point in Wilmington is my favorite, Tom Fazio, and Fazio is my favorite designer. And then Old Chatham has a great logo of the dog Hogan, who was their longtime mascot for 10 years. And that's where I play the most, so I wanted to work that one in. So there's so many, but I could also mention Yeamans Hall down in Charleston, which is one of the finest golf experiences that exists. And Mid Pines down in Southern Pines, which is 100 years old this year as we speak, and is one of the purest walking golf experiences that you could possibly have. So I can't pick one, but there's a lot that are my favorite for various reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Not that anybody asked, but when someone asks me what I think heaven looks like, I'm inclined to tell them it looks like this picture of Biltmore Forest, which happens to be one of the best places in my mind. But
that easily could be a favorite as well. And that was taken by Ryan Montgomery with his drone back in August. He's had 2 photo shoots in Asheville over the last 6 months. One, that one was in late August, and another one in the fall at the height of the fall color season. And the people there in the book that we're doing there are just going to be blown away with the images we've gotten. And a couple of those are used in this particular book as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Lee, I just want to quickly mention as well, that one of the great things about this book is it's for those of us who have played a few of these courses, there's a way in which the stories, they bring back that great feeling, that memory of having been there. But also there's a way in which this book, it provides an aspirational kind of checklist for people too. I mean, there's some places that would just be wonderful. They're definitely on my bucket list to play. Whether I'll get to all 18 or not, I don't know. But the book really works both ways, and I think it just speaks again to how much it has to offer to different kinds of readers.
And very quickly, Mark, that there's not just the 18 featured courses. There's also a few sidebars. We've got Hope Valley. We've got the Cradle at Pinehurst, Chichester Creek down on the South Carolina coast. So there are a few others worked in as well that just couldn't get past the 18, but I wanted to get in a wider mix of courses in as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. One final question we have from Kirk is, when you walk, do you carry a full set of 14 clubs or do you pare it down?
That's a good question. Usually I will just carry 13 clubs, sometimes 12. And I try and use a bag that is 3 pounds, no more than that. And I've got a couple very simplistic skewed down bags without a lot of gewgaws that are 3 pounds each. And if you save a pound on the bag and you save a couple pounds with clubs, that's 3 pounds, and that makes a difference on the back 9. So yeah, and take out extraneous balls, a lot of the stuff that you don't need, and you find often that you don't need a lot of the stuff that you got in a golf bag. That's a good question.
It's a great question.
All right, so we're about to wrap things up. So I want to end with a question for both of you that I like to ask at the end of my events. What is something that either you're working on or you'd like to promote that's going on currently in your life? And then what are you reading and enjoying lately?
Mark, I'll let you go for. Let me.
It's always a hard question to ask an editor because we have so many different books we're working on at a given time. I'll tell you that right now we're planning for our 100th anniversary at UNC Press, which is in 2022. And so the list of books we're working on right now is really representative of all the things we've published over the years, from African American history to books about North Carolina and the South to great works of books about American religion. And so I can't tell you any one book that jumps out ahead of the others, but it is a great time to be working and publishing, and it's a great time to work with such a gifted group of authors. So I love what I do. In terms of what I'm reading right now, I'm always reading about 6 books at once. That's the nature of the beast. But I will tell you that I intend to pick up John Grisham's new novel as my beach reading for a trip to the Outer Banks in just a couple of weeks here at the end of the month.
Well, my project right now, Talia, is to figure out how to clone this concept and take it past the Carolinas. I don't know if we ought to do the Eastern Seaboard or I'd rather go north than south, because the further south you go, the more people are want to get in a golf cart. And as far as what I'm reading is a package arrived today from UNC Press that has got your book about barbecue, Mark.
Black Smoke.
There.
I just happen to have a copy of that book right here, Lee. Yeah. Black Smoke by Adrian Miller. This is a great book.
My book is number 2 out of UNC Press this month. If you got a book on barbecue, that's got to be number 1. So that's what I'm reading.
We're planning to host Adrian Miller in June with John Shelton Reed for a barbecue conversation. So maybe you'll tune into that one in a couple months.
We keep saying golf and barbecue is fantastic.
We are going to go ahead and close things out. Just a quick couple reminders before I end the call. I would like to encourage everybody who's not already subscribed to Flyleaf's email newsletter or our Crowdcast page to go ahead and sign up for that so that you can see all the upcoming events we have. We also, all of the events that we've ever hosted on Crowdcast are recorded. So if you want to watch this event back or go back and watch some of our previous events, you can find those all at the bottom of our Crowdcast page. And for this one, you can just refresh the very same link and it will turn into a video that you can watch back or share with a friend. And I do want to give a final bump to the fact that Lee is stopping by Flyleaf to personalize copies of Good Walks and Football in a Forest. So if you'd like either of those, they make great Mother's Day and Father's Day presents. Or if you have a graduate who loves golf, it's that season. So I do encourage you to go over to our website, order a copy, and you can indicate how you'd like it personalized or inscribed in your order comments. And that's just a great gift item or for your personal collection. All right. Thank you both so much. And thank you to everyone for watching. Have a good night.
Enjoy it.
Good night.